I love this for the New York Islanders, as the Simon Holmstrom we were hoping for all season long has finally arrived, and he just delivered his best game as an Islander so far in a huge game against the Minnesota Wild, one where the Islanders were able to pull out the victory in overtime, in large part due to a beautiful 3-on-3 goal from Holmstrom. And this is so exciting for multiple reasons. For one, with the team, I know it was not the most exciting game, and some people were actually critical of how the Islanders looked slow in this game. Keep in mind, the Minnesota Wild at this point in time are the second best team in the NHL. They're in that insane division with the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. So to get 2 points against that team is very impressive. The fact the Islanders have beaten all three of those teams is incredibly impressive. No, it was not their best looking game. 9 times out of 10, Minnesota comes out in a night with a victory. So the fact the Islanders were able to beat them is impressive. But more importantly, it's so exciting that they're beating teams like this with help from their young players, which is the perfect transition to talk about Simon Holmstrom and how I'm really impressed with how he has played recently. Now, before we get back into it, this video is brought to you by Kalshi. When you download Kalshi using the link in the description below, be sure to enter code DIGESTNHL to get $20 when you trade your first 100. Kalshi is the largest prediction market in the United States. On their platform, you can trade yes/no on real-life events, sports, elections, and pretty much anything. Whether you're in New York, California, Texas, or anywhere across the country, Kalshi is live in all 50 states. For sports fans, trade on game outcomes, player performances, or even playoff chances, all on a regulated market where you can cash out at any time. For example, if you believe the Colorado Avalanche are going to win the Stanley Cup, you can trade on it with Kalshi. Now, personally, as an Islander fan, having the Colorado pick, I don't want the Colorado Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup, but I can trade no on them winning with Kalshi. In addition, if you believe the Islanders are going to win the Stanley Cup, you can trade on that with Kalshi as well. Now, the chances of the Islanders winning the Stanley Cup are not great this season, but what is a really good chance is them making the playoffs, and Kalshi currently has them at 55%. So if you think the chance of the Islanders making the playoffs is better than 55%, this is a great trade for you on Kalshi. It's genuinely a smarter way to use your sports knowledge, and you can close positions whenever you want. Download Kalshi using the link in the description below, and again, use code DIGESTNHL to get $20 when you trade your first 100. Thank you to Kalshi for sponsoring this video. It has not been the perfect season we expected from him. After he put up 45 points in 75 games last year and scored 20 goals in those 75 games, a lot of fans were really expecting this instant step up, and I think there was a lot of reason for that. I felt like last season Holmstrom started really slow, really struggled to find consistency in the lineup, and then as the season went on, it got better and better and better. So the hope was he'd start off this season where he left off last season. That didn't happen. It really feels like he started off this season pretty much a half a step ahead of where he started off last season, at least defensively. I felt like offensively he was really struggling to start this year, although I think a big part of that definitely was his placement and inconsistency in the lineup, which, if we're going to talk about Patrick Waugh as a coach, is the one thing I think he can work on with the Islanders. I think he's actually having an incredible season as a coach this year. I think he should be in the running for the Jack Adams, but one of the flaws Patrick Waugh has is he does tend to really like to shake up this lineup. When you're a guy like Simon Holmstrom, who I think values consistency in where he plays every single night, that can definitely be a struggle. Still, the offense is starting to tick up now. He's now closer to being on pace to what he had last season. He now has 23 points in 44 games. That's about a half a point per game. It's slightly above that because the Islanders, he has one more point than what would be a point per game. So that's actually below the clip he had last year, especially considering he only played 75 games last season. But I really think in these past few weeks, Holmstrom has been playing the best, most consistent hockey we've seen him play all season long. With young players, there's kind of different things to look for. One thing when it comes to a player like Holmstrom is just first showing that you can have a game like you just did in Minnesota, where you really are so impressive both offensively and defensively. He was huge on the penalty kill, getting the Islanders a shorthanded goal, and that is something that has always been a part of his game. what really has been lacking for a lot of times is just the way how often he's able to produce offense and really drive a line. And I don't think Holmstrom's ever going to be a huge line driver or anything like that, but I really do think there is another level to this player beyond a 40-point player. I think he's more than just a 20-goal scorer, 20-assist player. I don't think he's a point-per-game player, anything crazy like that, but I think there is a player between those two extremes where I really see Holmstrom as a player who can put up 55, maybe even 60 points a season, in addition to that offensive talent he has, really score 25 to maybe even 30 goals. I think his shot is incredibly underrated. And you look at his shooting percentage year by year, he has one of the better shooting percentages in the NHL for now 3 seasons in a row, which tells you right away with this player, he has to shoot a little bit more. I think he has to feel a bit more confident. I think that's a big thing when it comes to NHL, especially younger NHL players who don't dominate right away the way players like Schaefer do. It takes a bit to really develop your confidence in the offensive zone, but I think we're really starting to see that recently with Holmstrom, and this is really exciting for the Islanders because this is a player who is only 24 years old. I know compared to guys like Cal Ritchie and Schaefer, he's older in the sense where like, these players are 20, 18 years old. Holmstrom is going to be a part of the Islanders' future for a very long time. He is extended into next season at $3.625 million. Keep in mind here, he is an RFA at the end of this contract, so the Islanders hold his rights, and like the way he's playing, there's no doubt the Islanders are going to hold onto this player. So when we talk about the transition to the young guys and like the next core of the Islanders, Holmstrom is going to be a huge part of this. Really, how huge is going to really depend on how much of a next step he can take. But I think is so underrated about this player is the defensive side of his game, and that's something I really want to highlight in last night's game too, because it was just as good as the offense. The offense he put up was huge, absolutely, but he was also crucial on the Islanders' penalty kill. He's really been one of the better penalty killers for the Islanders all season long, and while that unit was a disaster last season, they've really returned to form this year. And when you consider young players typically struggle with the defensive side of the game, the fact he is so sound defensively, and I feel like fans don't give him enough credit for what he does defensively, this is such an important player. I think a lot of times people look at different advanced metrics that don't really tell the full story. For example, Holmstrom would be like, oh yeah, he's not winning his minutes defensively. Well, that doesn't really hold the same weight when you consider Holmstrom is regularly put against the top players the Islanders have to play against because he's trusted so much by Patrick Waugh. And as we're going to talk about a little later, I would like to see him get more consistent time with the same line mates, because when you're constantly changing who you're playing with, it can be really challenging for you to consistently put up offense. That's really a harder part. It's one thing to play defense with a new unit. It's another place to have really consistency offensively when you're playing with a different center, in particular, every single night. But I really wanted to touch on the Islanders and how liking they're getting more depth scoring. Holmstrom has been a huge part of that. The loss of Kyle Palmieri has been a big blow to this team. We're finally at a point in this season where he is not among their top 10 players in terms of points, which for the longest time, despite being injured for 20 games, he was still in that position. Unfortunately, Kyle Palmieri will not return, but it's really good to see players like Holmstrom really climbing up the leaderboard for the Islanders. He is now in their top 5 in scoring. Again, having a 24-year-old player in your top 5 in scoring is very exciting. It's even more exciting when you also have an 18-year-old player in Schaefer, even higher among that list. Also want to shout out, he has not been playing that well recently in terms of offense, but Emil Heineman is also a player who is in the top 10 for the Islanders at number 6 with 13 goals, 7 assists. And with Heineman, I always like to point out with fans, some people like to criticize players when they're not scoring offensively. Unless you're a player like Mathew Barzal or Bo Horvat, or even Matthew Schaefer, you're not going to be consistently scoring in every single game. That's not how the NHL works. The big question is what you're doing when you're not scoring. And this is something I really appreciate with Holmstrom that does not get enough credit. When he's not scoring, he's still a huge penalty killer. He's very important for the Islanders' defensive side of the game. And with Heineman, while he's not as big of a defensive player yet, I think he will get there. Right now, he is leading the Islanders in hits and really in the top 5 in the NHL in the hitting category. So he might not be scoring at the rate he was at the start of the season, but if you think that he's not providing value to this Islanders team just because he's not scoring goals, that is not the case. I think Heineman is going to be more of a streaky goal scorer. I wonder if Holmstrom can really find more consistency in his game. We've seen a couple spurts now where he's able to prolong this for longer stretches to end the season. Hopefully the Islanders are going to get a stretch like that from Holmstrom. It would really help them in the push for the playoffs. I wanted to end this video off talking a little bit about the lineup. And the one thing I'm struggling with Patrick Waugh is just the amount he changes these lines. Now, What he has here right now without Bo Horvat in the lineup, I actually really like. I think it makes a ton of sense to have two more scoring wingers with Mathew Barzal. Lee and Barzal play very well together, and Duclair and Barzal seem to have some chemistry. I really like this first line, and it seems like Duclair has finally earned some trust. Keep in mind, like looking at the previous, he's now in the top 10 for the Islanders in scoring. Helped a lot by that 5-point game against the Devils, but the point is, Duclair is playing better, and you're going to need more of that from Duclair. This is a team that's going to need more scoring by committee. You're not going to have two players really carrying the Islanders' offense. So Duclair stepping up has been huge. I think it makes sense to really try Heineman with a player like Ritchie, who is more of a pass-first player. Gonna be honest, Drouin is really frustrating me at this point. I don't think it makes sense playing him with Ritchie. I don't really know where I would play him. Maybe I play him with Pageau. He needs to show more to stay in this lineup. When I talk about players, what they provide other than scoring, that's my big issue with Drouin. Players like Heineman, players like Holmstrom, they provide a lot of value when they are not consistently scoring because they do other things. I'm not quite seeing that with Drouin. I definitely think he should be taken off the power play. Third line, really quickly. This is the line I think Holmstrom should play with. A lot of times people get negative because Holmstrom plays so well with Pageau. I know there are rumors about Pageau here and there. While he's on the team, I have a feeling there's a chance he might stay on the team as well, at least for the end of this season. It makes total sense to just ride what works. And Pageau and Holmstrom work. I really like Shabanov on that line as well. I thought he had a good showing with Holmstrom at the beginning of this season. Let us know what you think in the comments below, both about Holmstrom, about this Islanders lineup in general. The scoring has taken a hit from the beginning of the season. This is not as deep of a team as it was due to injuries to start the year, but still, this just shows how deep the Islanders were to start the season, where you still have three lines that you can expect to put up some level of offense. I'm not really loving all three of them, but you can expect on any night all three of these lines to somewhat win their minutes and produce. And that is something I love about this Islanders team. But I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. That's going to do it for this episode of Islanders Digest. Thank you for watching. Let's go, Islanders.